The moment I opened my front door to find Patricia Henderson from the HOA standing there with her arms crossed, and that pinched expression she always wore, I knew my day was about to go sideways. "Victor Fowler, we need to talk about that monstrosity attached to your house," she said, pointing her perfectly manicured finger toward my mailbox. I glanced at the heated mailbox I'd installed just 3 weeks earlier. It was a beautiful piece of engineering, honestly. Stainless steel construction with a discrete heating element that kept the interior temperature just above freezing, preventing ice buildup and protecting packages from the brutal Minnesota winter. I'd mounted it professionally, run the electrical line underground, and even painted it to match my house's trim. It looked better than half the regular mailboxes in Riverside Estates. "What seems to be the problem, Patricia?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. After 2 years living in this neighborhood, I'd learned that staying calm with the HOA president was essential. "The problem is that it's not approved. The problem is that it violates our community standards. The problem is that you installed it without submitting the proper paperwork to the Architectural Review Committee." She pulled out her phone and started reading from it. Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that any external modifications must be approved in writing before installation. "It's a mailbox, Patricia. The old one was falling apart. Then you should have replaced it with an appropriate mailbox from the approved vendors list." She thrust a printed document at me. "You have 14 days to remove this heated contraption and install a regulation mailbox. If you don't comply, you'll face daily fines of $100. I took the notice, my jaw tightening. "Patricia, do you know why I installed this?" "Because in the past 6 months, there have been 17 reported mail thefts in this neighborhood. 17. My own packages were stolen twice last month. This heated mailbox has a security lock and keeps everything protected. That's what the police are for, Victor. We have rules for a reason." 14 days. She turned on her heel and walked back to her white Lexus, leaving me standing there in the December cold. I went inside and called my neighbor, Tom Richards, who dealt with Patricia's wrath over his vegetable garden last summer. "She's going after my mailbox now," I told him. Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Welcome to the club, man. Patricia won't be happy until every house looks like it came from the same factory. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight it. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about security." Over the next few days, I did my research. I pulled up the police reports for mail theft in Riverside Estates going back 2 years. The numbers were worse than I'd thought. In the winter months, when people ordered more packages online for the holidays and couldn't leave them outside, mail theft skyrocketed. Last January alone, there had been 23 incidents. The local police had even issued a community advisory about it. I gathered photos of other mailboxes in the neighborhood that technically violated the HOA rules. Mrs. Chen on Maple Drive had decorative flowers permanently attached to hers. The Johnsons on Oak Street had painted theirs bright red, which wasn't on the approved color list. And don't even get me started on the Henderson family themselves. Patricia's relatives 3 streets over had a massive decorative mailbox shaped like a barn that was definitely not standard. Armed with this information, I requested a hearing with the HOA board. According to the bylaws, any homeowner facing fines had the right to present their case. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th, which gave me just enough time to prepare my defense. The night before the hearing, my girlfriend Jennifer Davis came over with dinner and moral support. We'd been dating for 8 months, and she'd quickly learned about the particular joys of HOA living. "Are you nervous?" she asked, setting out containers of Thai food on my kitchen table. More annoyed than nervous, I admitted. The whole thing is ridiculous. I'm trying to protect my property and my mail, and they're treating me like I painted my house purple. Jennifer squeezed my hand. You've got a solid case. The data doesn't lie, and if they're applying rules selectively, that's discrimination. I just wish I could prove that the heated mailbox actually works. Like, definitively show them that it's preventing theft. Can't you check with the police? See if there have been any thefts at your address since you installed it. I paused mid-bite. That's actually brilliant. Even if it's only been 3 weeks, the contrast with the previous months might show something. The next morning, before the hearing, I stopped by the Riverside police station. Officer Mike Chen, who'd taken my report about the stolen packages in November, was at the front desk. Victor, right. The stolen Amazon packages, he said when I explained why I was there. That's me. I'm wondering if you could give me a report of theft incidents at my address over the past year. He raised an eyebrow. That's public record, but can I ask why? I explained the situation with the HOA. Officer Chen shook his head sympathetically. HOAs can be tough. Hang on, let me pull this up. He printed out a summary for me. From January to November of the previous year, my address had reported 6 theft incidents. Since mid-December, when I'd installed the heated mailbox, 0. You know, Officer Chen said, leaning forward, we've been trying to get this neighborhood to install better mailbox security. That heated mailbox of yours with the locking mechanism is exactly what we recommend. Maybe I should write that up formally for you. Would you? That could really help my case. Give me an hour. Come back before your hearing. The HOA board meeting was held in the community center, a bland rectangular building that hosted everything from book clubs to heated debates about fence heights. When I arrived at 7 p.m., the board was already assembled at a long table at the front of the room. Patricia sat in the center, flanked by 4 other board members: Robert Martinez, Susan O'Neill, David Park, and Margaret Walsh. About 15 other homeowners sat in the audience, probably there for their own grievances or just for the entertainment. These meetings could get pretty dramatic. Patricia called the meeting to order with 3 sharp raps of a gavel. First order of business, the matter of Victor Fowler's unpermitted mailbox installation. I stood and walked to the microphone set up for homeowners. Thank you for hearing my case. I'd like to start by explaining why I installed the heated mailbox. I presented my research, starting with the police statistics on mail theft. I pulled up a chart on the projector showing the spike in thefts during winter months. Several people in the audience nodded along. In the 3 weeks since I installed this mailbox, I've had 0 incidents of theft or tampering. The locking mechanism, combined with the heating element that prevents ice from jamming the lock, has proven effective. I handed out copies of the police report Officer Chen had prepared for me. This is a formal recommendation from the Riverside Police Department advocating for secure, weather-resistant mailboxes in our neighborhood. Patricia's expression soured as she read the report. That's all very interesting, Victor, but it doesn't change the fact that you violated the approval process. Rules exist for a reason. I understand that, and I apologize for not submitting the paperwork first, but I'd like to point out that selective enforcement of rules is discriminatory. I pulled up photos of the other non-compliant mailboxes on the projector. These mailboxes also don't meet the standard requirements, yet none of these homeowners have received violation notices. The audience murmured. I saw Mrs. Chen in the 3rd row looking uncomfortable. Susan O'Neill leaned forward. Mr. Fowler, are you accusing this board of discrimination? I'm saying the rules should be applied consistently. If my mailbox is a problem, then all of these should be problems too. But instead of focusing on aesthetics, maybe we should be focusing on security and safety. Robert Martinez spoke up. What about the electrical work? Was that permitted? Yes, I have the electrical permit right here. I'd anticipated this question. A licensed electrician ran the line underground, and it was inspected by the city. Everything is up to code. The board members conferred among themselves in hushed whispers. Finally, Patricia spoke. We'll take this under advisement and vote. Please wait outside. I stepped out into the hallway with Jennifer, who'd been sitting in the audience. You did great, she said. I don't know. Patricia looked ready to have me hanged. 20 minutes later, they called me back in. Patricia stood, her expression rigid. The board has voted 3-2 to uphold the violation notice. You have 14 days to remove the heated mailbox and install an approved replacement, or face daily fines. My stomach dropped. Even with the police recommendation, even with the proof that it's preventing crime. The rules are the rules, Mr. Fowler. If everyone just did whatever they wanted, we wouldn't have a community, we'd have chaos. I looked at the other board members. Robert and Susan had clearly voted with Patricia. David and Margaret looked uncomfortable, likely the dissenting votes. Can I appeal this decision? You can request another hearing in 30 days, but the fines will begin if you haven't complied in 14 days. I left that meeting angry but determined. Jennifer tried to calm me down over coffee at her apartment. Maybe you should just replace it for now and fight the rule change through the proper channels. No way. This is about more than just my mailbox now. They're prioritizing their aesthetic preferences over homeowner security. That's wrong. So what's your plan? I thought about it. I need to prove beyond any doubt that the heated mailbox is preventing theft. 3 weeks of data isn't enough for them, apparently. I need a whole winter. But they're going to fine you. Let them. I'll keep records of everything. Meanwhile, I'm going to document every single mail theft in this neighborhood from now until spring. I want to show exactly what happens when people don't have secure mailboxes. Jennifer looked at me with concern. Just be careful. Patricia Henderson seems like the type to escalate. She wasn't wrong. 5 days later, I got an email from Patricia with a CC to the entire board. Mr. Fowler, this is your final warning. You have 9 days remaining to comply with the board's decision. Failure to do so will result in automatic fines of $100 per day, billed monthly to your HOA account. These fines will continue to accrue until compliance is achieved. Additionally, if your HOA account becomes delinquent, we can place a lien on your property. I forwarded the email to my lawyer friend, Marcus Webb, who I'd gone to college with and who now practiced property law in Minneapolis. He called me within an hour. Victor, they can absolutely do this. HOAs have a lot of power, and if you signed those bylaws when you bought the house, you're bound by them, even if they're being selective about enforcement. That's harder to prove, and honestly, even if you could prove it, the legal fees to fight it would probably exceed what you'd pay in fines. My advice: take the mailbox down, file for a rule change through the proper process, and pick your battles. What if I don't take it down? Marcus sighed. Then they fine you, and eventually they can put a lien on your house. If you don't pay the lien, they can force a sale. I've seen it happen. HOAs don't mess around. I thanked him for his honesty and hung up feeling defeated. But that night, something happened that changed everything. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a notification from the security camera I'd installed above my mailbox. The motion sensor had been triggered. I opened the app and watched as a figure in a dark hoodie approached my mailbox, tried the handle, found it locked, and then moved on to my neighbor's mailbox across the street. Within 30 seconds, they'd opened it. grabbed what looked like several envelopes and a small package, and jogged away into the darkness. My neighbor across the street was Timothy Grant, a retired teacher who traveled frequently. He'd mentioned just last week that he'd be in Arizona visiting his daughter for a month. I immediately called the police and sent them the security footage. Then I sent a copy to every member of the HOA board with a simple message. My heated, locked mailbox was just tested by a male thief at 2:14 a.m. They moved on to my neighbor's unlocked mailbox instead. This is what security looks like. Officer Chen arrived 15 minutes later to take a report. "This is good footage," he said, reviewing it on his tablet. "Clear enough that we might be able to identify the suspect. We've been trying to catch this guy for months. There's been a serial male thief operating in the neighborhood. Oh yeah. We think it's the same person responsible for most of the winter thefts. They know people order expensive stuff online during the holidays, and they know exactly which houses to hit. Looks like your mailbox worked exactly as intended. Can you put that in a report? Already on it. And Victor, keep that mailbox. I don't care what your HOA says." The next morning, I printed out stills from the security footage showing the thief trying my mailbox and successfully robbing Timothy's. I made copies and put one in every mailbox on my street with a note. This happened at 2:14 a.m. on January 20th. The house with the heated, locked mailbox was not successfully robbed. Is your mail safe? I also posted about it on the Riverside Estates Facebook group, which had about 300 members. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, dozens of people commented asking where they could buy a heated mailbox like mine. Others shared their own stories of mail theft. Some people tagged Patricia directly, asking why the HOA was preventing homeowners from protecting their property. Patricia, predictably, was furious. She posted a response. "While we sympathize with victims of crime, we cannot allow individual homeowners to make unapproved modifications that affect the aesthetic uniformity of our community. There are approved security mailboxes available from our vendor list. Please use the proper channels." Someone immediately responded. "I checked the vendor list. None of those options have heating elements or the same locking mechanism as Victor's mailbox. Why are you preventing us from using the best security option?" The thread exploded into a debate. Some people sided with Patricia, arguing that rules were rules. But the majority sided with me, especially after 3 more people reported mail thefts that same week. On day 15, the day after my compliance deadline passed, I received a formal notice that I was being fined $100 per day retroactive to that date. I'd expected it, but seeing it in writing still stung. Jennifer came over that evening and found me at my kitchen table, surrounded by printed documents and photos. "Still building your case?" she asked. "I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. 12 people have messaged me asking for help installing heated mailboxes. The local hardware store called because they've had a run on mailbox locks. People are waking up to the fact that security matters more than Patricia's vision of suburban perfection. Have you thought about what this is costing you? Those fines add up fast. $3,000 a month if I let it go that long, but I'm not going to. I've requested another hearing for February 10th. That's 3 weeks away. In the meantime, I'm going to document everything." I created a spreadsheet tracking every reported mail theft in Riverside Estates. I joined the Neighborhood Watch email list. I monitored the police scanner. By February 1st, there had been 17 more thefts in the neighborhood, all at homes with standard, non-locking mailboxes. My house, and the 4 other homes that had quietly installed locking mailboxes after my Facebook post, had 0 incidents. I also discovered something interesting while digging through HOA records, which were technically public to all homeowners. Patricia Henderson's brother-in-law owned Supreme Mailbox Company, one of the 3 vendors on the HOA's approved list. Those mailboxes were expensive, averaging $400 each, and they didn't include any heating elements or advanced locking mechanisms. When I mentioned this to Marcus during our weekly check-in call, he whistled low. That's a conflict of interest. If she's steering homeowners toward her brother-in-law's company and blocking alternatives, that could be problematic. Is it illegal? Depends on whether she disclosed it and whether she's profiting directly. But it's definitely unethical, and it might give you leverage. I spent the week before my second hearing preparing a presentation that would make a lawyer proud. I had police statistics, security footage, a map showing where thefts occurred versus where secure mailboxes were installed, testimony from Officer Chen, and documented proof of Patricia's family connection to the approved vendor. The hearing was scheduled for February 10th at 7 p.m., same as before. But this time, when I arrived at the community center, the parking lot was packed. The room was filled with at least 60 homeowners, triple the usual attendance. Patricia looked startled by the turnout. She tried to call the meeting to order, but people kept talking among themselves, the energy in the room buzzing with anticipation. "Order, please," Patricia said, rapping her gavel harder than necessary. "We have a full agenda tonight." But before she could continue, Tom Richards stood up. "I'd like to make a motion that we hear Victor Fowler's appeal first. I think everyone here will agree this is the most pressing issue." A chorus of agreements echoed through the room, Patricia's mouth pressed into a thin line. "Fine. Mr. Fowler, you have 15 minutes. I walked to the front and connected my laptop to the projector. I'm not going to waste anyone's time. The facts speak for themselves. I presented my research methodically. The police statistics showing winter mail theft patterns. The security footage of the attempted theft at my house and successful theft across the street. The map showing that homes with secure locking mailboxes had 0 thefts, while homes with standard mailboxes had been hit repeatedly. Officer Chen's formal recommendation. Letters from 12 homeowners requesting permission to install similar mailboxes. Then, I pulled up the documents showing Patricia's connection to Supreme Mailbox Company. I'm not suggesting anything improper, but I do think it's worth noting that the board president has a family member who profits from the current approved vendor list, while blocking alternatives that provide better security. The room erupted. People started shouting questions at Patricia. "Is this true? Why didn't you disclose this? Are you making money off us?" Patricia's face turned red. "That's slander. My family connections have nothing to do with my decisions as board president. Then why won't you approve mailboxes with better security features?" Someone shouted from the back. Susan O'Neill, one of the board members who'd voted against me before, stood up. "Patricia, I think we need to address this. If there's even the appearance of impropriety, we should recuse you from this decision." "Absolutely not. I've done nothing wrong." Robert Martinez, who'd also voted against me, looked uncomfortable. "Maybe we should table this and have an independent review." "There's nothing to review." Patricia slammed her gavel down. "The rules are clear. Mr. Fowler violated them. End of discussion." But David Park, one of the board members who'd voted in my favor before, wasn't backing down. "Patricia, with all due respect, this has gotten bigger than one mailbox. We have a security crisis in this neighborhood, and we're preventing people from protecting themselves because of aesthetic guidelines that might be influenced by conflicts of interest. That's a problem." The argument went on for another 20 minutes, with homeowners weighing in from the audience. Some shared their own stories of mail theft. Others demanded to know why the board was prioritizing appearance over safety. A few defended Patricia, but they were clearly in the minority. Finally, Margaret Walsh, the fourth board member who'd voted in my favor, made a motion. I move that we suspend the fines against Mr. Fowler pending a full review of our mailbox policies by an independent committee of homeowners. I further move that we temporarily allow secure, locking mailboxes on a case-by-case basis for homeowners who request them. I second that motion, David said immediately. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but the room was clearly against her. All in favor. 3 hands went up, David, Margaret, and surprisingly, Robert Martinez. Opposed, only Patricia and Susan voted no. Motion carries, Margaret said, her voice firm. Victor, your fines are suspended. The room broke into applause. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I knew this wasn't over. Patricia gathered her papers with sharp, angry movements. As people filed out, several homeowners stopped to thank me and ask about where I'd purchased my heated mailbox. I gave them the information for Secure Home Solutions, the company I'd used, and suggested they submit formal requests to the HOA right away. Jennifer met me outside, wrapping me in a hug. You did it. Not yet. This is just a temporary reprieve. Patricia isn't going to let this go. I was right. 2 days later, I received a letter from Patricia's personal attorney, not the HOA's lawyer, but her private one. It was a cease and desist, demanding that I stop defaming Patricia by suggesting she had conflicts of interest, and that I remove all posts from social media discussing her family's business connections. I immediately forwarded it to Marcus. This is interesting, he said when he called me back. She's threatening legal action in her personal capacity, separate from her role as HOA president. That suggests she knows she's on shaky ground with the conflict of interest issue. What should I do? Nothing. You stated facts, not opinions. You have documentation to back up everything you said. If she wants to sue you for defamation, she'll have to prove you lied and you didn't. This is intimidation, pure and simple. But the intimidation didn't stop there. Over the next week, I received 3 more letters from Patricia's lawyer, each more threatening than the last. Then she started filing complaints about other aspects of my property. My trash cans were 6 inches too far from the side of my house. My front lawn had brown patches that violated the landscaping standards. My car had been parked in the driveway for more than 72 consecutive hours without moving, which apparently violated some obscure vehicle storage rule. Each complaint came with a new fine. She's harassing you, Jennifer said, looking through the stack of violation notices. This is retaliation. I know, but what can I do about it? Tom Richards, who'd been dealing with Patricia's wrath for years, had an idea. Call a special homeowners meeting. According to the bylaws, if 25% of homeowners sign a petition, they can force a special meeting to address any issue, including board member conduct. It took me 3 days to collect the signatures I needed. People were eager to sign once they heard what was happening. By February 20th, I had signatures from 130 homeowners, well over the required 25% of Riverside Estates' 400 homes. I submitted the petition formally, requesting a special meeting to review board member conduct and potential conflicts of interest. According to the bylaws, the meeting had to be held within 30 days. Patricia tried to block it, claiming the petition didn't follow proper procedures, but David Park, using his authority as vice president, overruled her and scheduled the meeting for March 15th. During the weeks leading up to that meeting, something unexpected happened. The mail thief struck again, but this time the police caught them. Officer Chen called me at 6 in the morning on March 2nd. Victor, we got him. The mail thief. I wanted you to know since your footage helped us identify him. That's great news. Who was it? Guy named Derek Paulson. He's been hitting neighborhoods all over the metro area, but Riverside Estates was his main target. Your security footage gave us a positive ID, and we caught him in the act last night over on Birch Street. Will you need me to testify or anything? Probably not, but I'll let you know. In the meantime, I'm writing up a commendation for your role in helping us catch him. Your heated mailbox system with the integrated security camera basically cracked this case. When I shared this news on the neighborhood Facebook group, the response was even bigger than before. People were celebrating, tagging Patricia in comments, asking if she still thought aesthetic uniformity was more important than security. But Patricia wasn't backing down. She posted a terse response. I'm glad the suspect was apprehended. This doesn't change the fact that our community guidelines exist to maintain property values and neighborhood standards. Someone responded, property values. My house just appraised for $15,000 more than expected because of low crime and strong community engagement. Victor's mailbox helped catch a criminal. That's worth more than matching color schemes. The comment got 200 likes. The special meeting on March 15th was standing room only. Someone had tipped off the local news, and there were 2 camera crews in the parking lot. I hadn't expected media attention, but apparently, HOA president with vendor conflicts blocks security mailboxes during crime wave was a compelling story. A reporter from WCCO stopped me as I was walking in. Mr. Fowler, is it true that your heated mailbox helped catch a serial mail thief? The police have confirmed that the security footage from my mailbox system helped identify the suspect, yes. And the HOA tried to force you to remove it. They issued violation notices and fined me, yes. Do you think board president Patricia Henderson's family connection to an approved mailbox vendor influenced her decision? I chose my words carefully. I think that's a question the homeowners need to answer for themselves. That's why we're here tonight. Inside, the community center was packed beyond capacity. The fire marshal actually showed up and made some people wait outside. Patricia sat at the board table, looking smaller than usual, flanked by her lawyer. Tom Richards, who'd organized the petition, opened the meeting since it was a special homeowners meeting, not a regular board meeting. Thank you all for coming. We're here tonight to address concerns about board member conduct, specifically allegations of conflicts of interest and selective rule enforcement. Patricia's lawyer stood immediately. My client has done nothing wrong. This meeting is a witch hunt driven by one disgruntled homeowner who refuses to follow the rules. But Tom was ready. This isn't about one person. We have documented evidence of selective enforcement, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and retaliatory fining practices. The homeowners deserve answers. Over the next hour, multiple residents presented their cases. Mrs. Chen talked about how her decorative mailbox flowers had never been challenged despite technically violating the rules. The Johnson family pointed out their red mailbox had been there for 3 years without any violation notices. Someone else brought up Patricia's relatives with the barn-shaped mailbox. Then, I presented my evidence again, this time with additional data. Since my heated mailbox had been installed, my address had 0 theft incidents while the neighborhood overall had experienced 37 reported thefts. 4 other homes that had installed similar security systems after my Facebook post also had 0 incidents. The data is clear, I said. Secure, locking mailboxes with heating elements to prevent ice jamming work. They prevent crime. Yet the HOA board, led by Patricia Henderson, has blocked residents from installing them while pushing us toward approved vendors that happen to include her brother-in-law's company. Patricia's lawyer objected. There's no evidence that Miss Henderson personally profits from Supreme Mailbox Company. But her brother-in-law does, Tom interjected, and she never disclosed that relationship when making decisions about approved vendors. That's a conflict of interest, even if she doesn't profit directly. The homeowners voted that night on several measures. First, whether to remove the restrictions on mailbox types as long as they met basic size and safety requirements. The measure passed with 78% approval. Second, whether to require board members to disclose any family or financial connections to approved vendors. That passed with 89% approval. Third, and most dramatically, whether to remove Patricia Henderson as board president due to conflicts of interest and retaliatory conduct. That measure passed with 63% approval. Patricia stood, her face pale with rage. "This is outrageous. I've served this community for 6 years. You're making a huge mistake." But the vote was final. David Park would serve as interim president until the next election in May. As people filed out, Patricia stopped me in the parking lot. "You've ruined me," she said, her voice shaking. "I hope you're satisfied." "I didn't ruin you, Patricia. You did this to yourself when you put your own interests above the community's safety." She started to respond, but seemed to think better of it. Instead, she got in her Lexus and drove away. The news coverage the next day was extensive. The story made the evening news on 3 local stations, with headlines like "HOA President Ousted After Conflict of Interest Revealed" and "Heated Mailbox Controversy Sparks HOA Revolt." The Minneapolis Star-Tribune even ran a feature story about HOA overreach and how communities were pushing back against restrictive rules. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Other neighborhoods wanted advice on how to update their own HOA rules. Secure Home Solutions, the company that made my heated mailbox, called to ask if they could use my story in their marketing. I agreed, on the condition that they donate 10 heated mailboxes to low-income households in areas with high mail theft rates. But while I was celebrating the policy victory, something else was happening behind the scenes that I wouldn't learn about until weeks later. In early April, Detective Sarah Morrison from the Financial Crimes Unit of the Riverside Police Department called me. "Mr. Fowler, do you have time to come down to the station? I have some questions about your HOA. About the mailbox situation, related to it, yes, but it's evolved into something bigger." At the station, Detective Morrison explained that after Patricia had been removed as president, the new board had conducted an audit of the HOA's finances. What they'd found was troubling. It appears that over the past 3 years, Miss Henderson made several unauthorized payments to Supreme Mailbox Company, her brother-in-law's business, totaling approximately $67,000, Detective Morrison said. The payments were labeled as community improvements, but there's no documentation of any work being performed. My stomach dropped. "You're saying she was stealing from the HOA? We're investigating that possibility. We're also looking into whether she received kickbacks from the approved vendor list." Several homeowners have come forward saying they felt pressured to use specific vendors for repairs and improvements, always companies with some connection to Miss Henderson's family. "How can I help? Tell me everything about your interactions with her, especially regarding the mailbox situation. We need to establish a pattern of behavior." I spent 2 hours at the station, going through every email, every violation notice, every interaction with Patricia. Detective Morrison took detailed notes and made copies of all my documentation. "This is helpful," she said. "We're building a case for fraud and embezzlement. If convicted, she could face serious prison time." "I never wanted this," I said honestly. "I just wanted to protect my mail." "I understand, but you uncovered something bigger. These HOA fraud cases happen more often than people realize. Board members have a lot of power and very little oversight. What Miss Henderson did was criminal." Over the next month, the investigation expanded. The police discovered that Patricia had been running a sophisticated scheme for years. She'd created fake invoices for community improvements that never happened, funneled money to family members' businesses, and even set up a shell company to collect consulting fees for HOA management services. She was already being paid to perform. The total fraud exceeded $200,000. On May 3rd, Patricia Henderson was arrested at her home and charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and theft by swindle. The news made regional headlines. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness watching her being led away in handcuffs on the evening news. Jennifer came over that night and found me sitting quietly on my couch. "You okay?" she asked. "I keep thinking about how this all started with a mailbox." "Just a heated mailbox to stop package thieves. You didn't make Patricia commit fraud, you just exposed it." "I know, but her life is destroyed now. She destroyed her own life by stealing from her neighbors for years. Don't feel bad about that." The HOA held emergency elections in May. David Park ran for president and won easily. One of his first acts was to formally apologize to me on behalf of the board and refund all the fines I'd been charged. "We also want to recognize your contribution to neighborhood security," David said at the May meeting. The police department has confirmed that mail theft in Riverside Estates has dropped 85% since the Mailbox Security Initiative began. That's directly attributable to your efforts. The Neighborhood Watch Committee presented me with a plaque. It felt surreal, being thanked for something I'd initially done just to protect my own packages. But the best moment came a week later when I got an email from Officer Chen. The mail thief, Derek Paulson, had been convicted and sentenced to 18 months in prison. My security footage had been crucial evidence in the trial. "Your heated mailbox didn't just protect your mail," Officer Chen wrote. "It helped take a prolific criminal off the streets. That's real impact." Patricia's trial took place in July. I was called to testify about the HOA's vendor approval process and Patricia's response when I'd questioned the conflicts of interest. The prosecution built a compelling case showing years of systematic fraud. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding Patricia guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, plus fines and penalties. Her lawyer filed an appeal, but legal experts I spoke to said it was unlikely to succeed given the overwhelming evidence. By August, life in Riverside Estates had settled into a new normal. Nearly 40 homes now had heated, secure mailboxes like mine. Mail theft had become virtually non-existent. Property values had actually increased, despite Patricia's warnings that rule changes would destroy the neighborhood's appeal. The new HOA board had revised the bylaws to include strict financial oversight, mandatory disclosure of conflicts of interest, and a more democratic approval process for community decisions. What had started as my fight over a mailbox had transformed into a complete restructuring of how our neighborhood governed itself. Jennifer and I were having dinner on my back deck one warm evening in late August, when she brought up something I'd been thinking about too. "Have you considered running for the board? You'd be good at it," I laughed. "After everything I've been through, I think I've had enough HOA drama for a lifetime." "But you're good at this," You care about the community. You fight for what's right. Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to keep my mail safe and accidentally stumbled into local government reform. She reached across the table and took my hand. However it happened, you made a difference. The neighborhood is better because you stood up to Patricia. Looking back on the whole experience, from that first confrontation on my doorstep in December to Patricia's conviction in July, I realized Jennifer was right. What had seemed like a petty dispute over homeowner regulations had turned into something much more significant. I'd learned that HOAs, when run properly, could be valuable community organizations. But when run by people like Patricia who put personal interests over community welfare, they could become vehicles for abuse and fraud. The key was oversight, transparency, and homeowners willing to get involved and ask tough questions. My heated mailbox still sits at the end of my driveway, functioning perfectly. It keeps my mail safe from both weather and thieves. The temperature's been dropping again as autumn approaches, and I know that when winter comes, that heating element will prevent the lock from freezing just like it did last year. Sometimes I stand at my front window and watch people checking their mail. Mrs. Chen's heated mailbox matches her house's blue trim. The Johnsons finally replaced their bright red mailbox with a secure one in an approved color. Even Timothy Grant, my neighbor across the street who'd been robbed while visiting his daughter, installed a heated locking system after he returned from Arizona. The police still patrol the neighborhood regularly, but Officer Chen told me they've redirected resources to other areas with bigger problems since Riverside Estates' theft numbers dropped so dramatically. In September, David Park called me about serving on the new Architectural Review Committee. "We're rebuilding it from scratch," he explained. "We want people who understand that rules should serve the community, not the other way around." Interested, I thought about it for a while before agreeing. The committee met monthly, reviewed homeowner requests for modifications, and actually worked collaboratively with residents instead of just denying everything by default. It was remarkable how much more smoothly things ran when the goal was helping people, rather than enforcing arbitrary standards. In October, I got an unexpected letter from Patricia. She was in state prison serving her sentence and apparently had a lot of time to think. "I want to apologize," she wrote in neat, careful handwriting. "Not because my lawyer told me to, though he did suggest it for the appeal, but because you were right. I lost sight of what being a board president meant. I convinced myself that maintaining property values justified everything I did, but really, I was just protecting my own interests and my family's income. When you challenged me about the mailbox, it threatened my whole system, and I reacted badly. The fraud charges are deserved. I betrayed the trust of hundreds of families who counted on me to manage their community honestly. I'm truly sorry." I showed the letter to Jennifer. "Do you think she means it? Does it matter? She's where she belongs either way." "I guess you're right, though part of me feels bad for her." "That's because you're a good person, Victor. You can acknowledge someone's humanity even when they've done wrong things. That's not weakness." The anniversary of my mailbox installation came and went in December. A full year of protection from theft, ice, and weather. The local news did a follow-up story about the neighborhood transformation, interviewing residents about how things had changed since the heated mailbox revolt, as one headline had dubbed it. I declined to be interviewed, but plenty of other people spoke up. Tom Richards talked about how the community felt more democratic and responsive. Mrs. Chen discussed the improvements in safety. Officer Mike Chen from the police department praised the neighborhood's proactive approach to crime prevention. The story ended with a statistic that made me proud. Riverside Estates had gone from the third highest mail theft rate in the county to the lowest. All because people had the tools and freedom to protect their property. Jennifer and I got engaged on Christmas Eve. I proposed in my living room, both of us sitting by the fireplace, the heated mailbox visible through the front window. It was a reminder of how we'd navigated that crazy year together, and how she'd supported me through every step of the fight. "I have one condition," she said after accepting my proposal. "When we buy a house together, we're checking the HOA rules very, very carefully." I laughed. "Deal. Though I think I've learned how to handle HOA issues now." "True. But let's try to find a neighborhood where you don't have to stage a revolt, okay?" "Okay." In January, I helped 3 other neighborhoods in the metro area organize their own mailbox security initiatives. Word had spread about what we'd accomplished in Riverside Estates, and people wanted to replicate it. I'd become an accidental expert on HOA reform and community security. Marcus, my lawyer friend, joked that I should start a consulting business. "You could help homeowners fight back against overreaching HOAs. There's definitely a market for it." "I think I'll stick to my day job," I said. I worked in data analysis for a healthcare company, and while the HOA drama had been interesting, I didn't want it to take over my life. But I did agree to speak at a few community meetings and write an article for a local magazine about homeowner rights and HOA accountability. The article went viral online, generating thousands of comments from people sharing their own HOA horror stories. By February, a state legislator contacted me about testifying in favor of new HOA oversight legislation. Minnesota was considering a bill that would require HOA boards to undergo annual independent audits and mandate conflict of interest disclosures. I testified at the state capitol in March, telling my story to a room full of legislators and other homeowners. The bill passed in April with bipartisan support and was signed into law by the governor in May. "You changed the law," Jennifer said, watching the news coverage of the signing ceremony. "That's pretty incredible. A lot of people changed the law. I just shared my experience. Don't downplay it. Patricia's fraud would never have been discovered if you hadn't pushed back about your mailbox. Now every HOA in Minnesota will have better oversight. That matters." She was right, of course. Sometimes one small act of resistance, one refusal to back down, could create ripples that extended far beyond the original issue. On a sunny afternoon in June, almost exactly 18 months after Patricia had first knocked on my door to complain about my heated mailbox, I was working in my garage when a car pulled into my driveway. I didn't recognize the vehicle, a modest Toyota sedan with Wisconsin plates. The driver was a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed. "Are you Victor Fowler?" she asked. "That's me. Can I help you? I'm Rebecca Patterson. I'm a reporter with Milwaukee Magazine. I'm working on a story about HOA reform movements in the Midwest, and your name keeps coming up. Do you have time to talk?" I invited her in and made coffee while she set up her recording equipment at my kitchen table. Over the next 2 hours, I walked her through the entire story again, from the initial installation of the mailbox to Patricia's conviction to the new state legislation. "What would you say to other homeowners dealing with similar situations?" Rebecca asked. I thought about it carefully. "I'd say document everything. Know your rights. Get involved in your HOA instead of just complaining about it. And don't be afraid to stand up for what's right, even when it's inconvenient or costly. Change is possible, but someone has to be willing to fight for it. Do you have any regrets about exposing the fraud?" "No, but I do regret that it had to get so contentious. I wish Patricia had been willing to listen from the start, to consider that maybe security was more important than aesthetic uniformity. We could have avoided a lot of conflict. But would the fraud have been discovered? Probably not. So no, I don't really regret how things played out. The article came out in August and was later picked up by several national publications. My phone started ringing again with interview requests, but I turned most of them down. I told my story enough times. Now I just wanted to live my life. Jennifer and I got married in September in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside the Twin Cities. The guest list included Tom Richards and his wife, Officer Mike Chen, David Park from the HOA board, and Marcus, my lawyer friend who'd given me advice throughout the whole ordeal. During the reception, Tom raised his glass for a toast. To Victor, who proved that one person standing up for what's right can change an entire community, and to heated mailboxes everywhere. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Later that night, Jennifer and I stood on the vineyard's deck, looking out at the sunset. "So," she said, leaning into me, "our new house closes next month. Should we check if they allow heated mailboxes?" Our new house was in a different neighborhood, one with a much more relaxed HOA. We'd learned our lesson about reading the bylaws carefully before buying. "Already checked," I said. "No restrictions on mailbox types as long as they're not offensive or dangerous." "Perfect. Though after everything, would you even want a heated mailbox?" I thought about it. "You know what? Yeah, I would. Not because I have to fight for it, but because it works. It keeps our mail safe. And that was always the point." She kissed me. "Then let's get one." My heated mailbox in Riverside Estates continues to work perfectly. On cold winter mornings, when frost covers everything else, the lock remains ice-free and functional. Mail carriers have told me it's one of their favorite deliveries because they don't have to struggle with frozen hinges or iced-over locks. The neighborhood has thrived under new leadership. Property values increased 12% over the past year, exceeding county averages. The community pool underwent renovations. New playground equipment was installed at the park, and most importantly, residents felt heard and respected by their HOA board. Patricia was released on parole after serving 3 years of her 5-year sentence. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd moved to Iowa to live with her sister and was working as a cashier at a grocery store. Part of her parole conditions included full restitution to the HOA, which she was paying off in monthly installments. I never heard from her again after that one letter, and I was fine with that. Her story served as a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of unchecked power, even in something as seemingly mundane as a homeowner association. As for me, I continued serving on the Architectural Review Committee for another year before stepping down to focus on my new marriage and career. I'd done what I set out to do: protect my mail, expose corruption, and help create a better system for everyone. Jennifer and I settled into our new house in October, and yes, we installed a heated mailbox right away. This time, there was no drama, no violation notices, no fight with the HOA. Just a simple online application that was approved within 48 hours. Standing at the end of my new driveway on the first cold morning of winter, watching the heating element keep the lock frost-free while neighboring mailboxes were covered in ice, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I'd won some battle, but because I'd stood up for a simple principle: that security and common sense should trump arbitrary rules. The whole experience taught me that change happens when ordinary people refuse to accept unreasonable situations. It taught me that institutions, even small ones like HOAs, need accountability and transparency to function properly. And it taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of defiance can lead to the biggest transformations. My heated mailbox prevented mail theft all winter, just like I'd known it would. But more than that, it sparked a movement that reformed HOA governance across an entire state, helped catch a serial criminal, and showed hundreds of homeowners that they had more power than they realized. All because I refused to back down when someone told me I couldn't protect my property in the most effective way possible. That's a legacy I'm proud of.